Because I was going to ask a question before about sometimes women will push back if you attempt to go down a slightly deeper route. Sometimes the woman may say, I mean, like I gave an example the other day, I was talking to this woman about her tattoo and she didn't really, she humoured it for a little bit and then she didn't really want to continue down that and she pulled the conversation back to a more superficial level. Now, we could spend 5 minutes talking about, okay, so what do I do in that situation? But the truth of the matter is that was probably just a girl who wasn't interested anyway. It's probably just well, maybe not, but let's say that was a girl she was a no girl, she wasn't interested. So we don't need to really concern ourselves too much because this isn't going to work on everybody. Like there are going to be some women who they're not attracted, they're not going to entertain you, okay, fine. But for that larger portion of women who are sort of in the maybe camp, this is really the way to go if you want to create deeper sort of conversion, I suppose, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And what I told my students as well is like we have to sort out the girls that are not available to get those girls that are available.
Yeah.
Because whatever you do, I mean, if they are not available, they are not available.
Yeah.
So if we talk in the sense of girls that are available and the girls that are in the maybe category, which are like the vast majority of the girls, I would say that you have to create the connection in the real way, because when you create connection with a girl, it actually creates all the other stuff that we didn't, the dating community didn't believe was connected, but it is connected, and it comes with sexual attraction. Because most of the time when we're having a conversation in deeper level, but that is like about bonding, not so much about sexual attraction. Yeah, but that is not true, because when you're talking about under the surface topics, or you're having a conversation under the surface, the chemical reaction in the brain is actually exactly the same as when she's having sex. So it is part of it. It is really, really part of it. It's just a misconception that having like a conversation under the surface will not lead to sexual attraction. That's completely a big myth.
Yeah, because it's this sort of mixing up of comfort, what used to be called comfort, with being antithetical to attraction, isn't it? It's this idea that if you sort of get on a deeper level with her, somehow you're gonna end up friend zoning yourself. I mean, I would say, like I said to you before, I would say for me personally, I think that I've always intuitively understood this, because I think on dates I'm pretty good. I think one-on-one on dates I'm pretty good, and I can, for the most part, I mean not always, but for a lot of the time I can get onto a deeper level with the girls that I spend, the women that I spend time with, and and the other thing is I really enjoy that as well. I think you've got to be interested in people. You've got to really, and we talked about this before, didn't we? I mean, it's kind of like it always surprises me when guys sort of say, this girl was boring or whatever. I mean, if you're attracted to her, yeah, great, that's cool. But I want to find out more about her. I want to find out what makes her tick as an individual. And I think that's really important. So I think intuitively I've always understood this, and I've been quite sort of on point with it on the dates. But what's great about you is that you've got this framework to really explain it and to really sort of make it almost like a step-by-step process for guys to follow. And also as well, just I think you also advocate doing it more on the initial approach, and I think that's interesting for me, because I think a lot of the time my initial approaches probably are more on the superficial side, and then I bring out the depth more in the date. But what you're advocating is actually from the off, going for this like deeper approach.
Yeah, I actually do, because I mean, once you get into a girl and you're saying your day approach ritual, basically like, excuse me, I think you look really nice, I had to come and say hi to you. Yeah. That itself is such a big impact that I feel many times is enough to get that part of attention done. You see? And then now, almost directly, I want to go into the spike of dopamine, oxytocin, all these love hormones. I want them to spike as soon as possible. And you're doing it with the right sense of question. Yes. So that is like, it goes like this one. You might open an open-ended question directly, or you go with a closed-ended question. There is a setup question, then you're going to create an open-ended question, and after that one you're going to do something I call seek clarification.
Right.
That is super important. Seek clarification is what is actually, what actually take everything under the surface in a very clear sense. Okay. And based on that one, you can actually like all other things when it comes to like being cocky or being funny or being sexual will be based on her answers. You're going to take her answer and base your cockiness or whatever that is calibrated and effective will be actually based on her answers.
Yeah.
In terms of relating to her answers.
Yeah, and you've illustrated how to do this really well, but for the viewers, so because we always say, you need to sexualize the interaction, you need to bring flirtation into the interaction. It can't just be this friendly type chat. So based on what you said, could you give an example of how you would bring a sort of flirtation or sexual spike into the interaction?
For example, what you said actually is that you lived in Krakow before, but you decided to move to Gdynia because you want to follow your passion. So if I understood you correctly, you left a stable job in Krakow to follow your passion to Gdynia.
Yes.
And I have to say that I find it really sexy when a girl just follow her dreams and take a risk for things she wants.
Yeah.
And really pull the trigger off. I find that really sexy about you. So I have to admit that. That is one of this. Try to sexualize based on her answers. If I want to do it in a cocky and a funny way, it's like, so if I understood you correctly, you moved from Krakow to Gdynia just because you like the beaches. But to be honest, I think that's quite weird, and you're a little bit weird because the beach in Gdynia is not that great.
Yeah.
So for my part, I'm not really sure what how much you like beaches actually, but fine, I get your point. I get your point. That is more like a cocky style of it, but it's based on her answers though.
Yeah.
So that's so powerful. Yeah.
Or could you say something like, "Oh, you moved." So if I understand you correctly, you moved to Gdynia for the beaches. So you're one of those type of girls, You're one of those type of girls. I see. Okay, fair enough. Interesting. But then you go back and you take it deeper again.
Yeah. It's like, okay, so you're one of the bikini girls, yeah, walking around the streets, drinking pina coladas all day. Okay, I get it.
Yeah.
So, but if we go back to the other passion of yours that made you actually move to Gdynia, can you explain me a little bit more about that?
I think,
for example,
I think something that works really well is, I suppose the term is fractionation, where you're bringing in elements of flirtation and then you're taking it back to a more serious thing again, and that's sort of what you're describing there. Because I've always found that, and that's really how I structure when I'm on a date, or even actually in the approach. It's this sort of flipping between, on the one hand, being quite cocky and quite funny, and on the other hand, actually being a bit more serious and trying to get to know her as a person. And both of those things are valid. Both of those things are. It's not sort of an act or me pretending to be somebody I'm not, because both of those things are true. On the one hand, I do like to be quite cocky and funny and flirty because I enjoy that side of it. I enjoy the dopamine hit myself, but I also do want to find out more about her because I just find people interesting. I find women interesting. I want to learn about her as a person and kind of understand her on a bit of a deeper level. So I think if both of those things are present and you sort of going between the two, that can be very powerful.
Absolutely. But what I want to emphasize here also is, like, as soon as you start talking about yourself again after this cockiness, I mean, there is nothing that beats the love hormones or the chemical reaction in the brains that leads to being in love or feel attraction, feel sexual attraction. I mean, nothing beats her levels when she's talking about herself. So even though you're coming with those sexual spikes because you want to create a polarity, which you should do, that itself doesn't spike the attraction or the dopamine levels even higher. No, it doesn't. So it's more like you're making a statement that, I find you attractive as a man and you are a woman. So that's more like that kind of statement. But when it comes to spiking the sexual attraction and the sexual feeling in general, that is still within her talking about herself. Wow. Which is very interesting. I mean, if you look at the neuroscience into this one, this is exactly how it works. I also believe many times, as a general rule, it's like women's sexuality is very different from men's sexuality in terms of the comprehensive variables that is actually leading to sexual attraction. You see, and I think this one is a big part of it actually, because men doesn't. I mean, if we see a beautiful woman, we can decide already that, wow, I will be I'm super sexually attracted with that hot girl, and that's basically it. Yeah, it doesn't work the same way in women. They have to have those spikes for a longer time.
Yes.
And we have to create a conversation that is based on she having those spikes for a longer time, until she reaching that hook point or that point of her falling in love or really want to have sex with you or be close to you. Yes.
Yeah.